Welcome to StripeDev Live. My name is Paul Ashes, and I'm a software engineer at Stripe. And today, we're going to talk all about Stripe Apps, a new product that we announced last week at Sessions. If you didn't happen to catch that, if you're not familiar with it, don't worry, we're going to get you up to speed. Stripe Apps is the new way to extend Stripe. It lets you embed custom user experiences directly in the Stripe dashboard and orchestrate the Stripe API. You can create an app to streamline operations for your business or the millions of businesses using Stripe. As a quick note, everyone you're going to see here today worked directly on Stripe Apps, and we are incredibly proud and excited to share this with you. Quick agenda, what we're going to go over today. We're going to start with some demos so you know exactly what Stripe Apps is. We're going to have a brief panel discussion with some people who built Stripe Apps, and we'll finish up with a lengthy Q&A where you can ask us any question you want about Stripe Apps. So if you are on YouTube or Twitch, please just drop your questions directly into the chat. You can start doing that right now. If you're watching this on Twitter, please use the Stripe Apps hashtag, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen right now. And please, stick around to the end of the show where we have something fun to share with you. Right, to kick us off, let's start with my colleague, Corey, who's going to start us off with a demo of Stripe Apps. Corey.
Thanks, Paul. Hey, everyone. I'm Corey, a software engineer here at Stripe. I've worked with a number of partners during our private beta to launch with us. These are the apps that you can see on the marketplace today. Today, I want to help you build your own Stripe app as well. So if you take a look at the dashboard here, I have a super to-do app here that we've built so that you can go ahead and build one yourself. This example is available in our GitHub repo under the examples folder. Please check it out so you can go ahead and build one yourself. So taking a look at this app, we have a lists view here that shows a bunch of different teams with to-dos to complete, and as well a to-dos tab as well with to-dos that have yet been completed. But it'd be really great if we can also see ones that have been already completed to see the ones that you've already done. So let's go take a look at VS Code. In our customer list view component, you can see here in the tabs panel that we have both the list tab panel component and both also the to-dos component. What I'd like to do is comment this out and add in my show to-dos component that will conditionally render to-dos that have been yet completed and also ones that have been completed. Let's add that in. As well, I need something to toggle this in. So let's add in a switch component. Let's save that and check it out. Great. We've added a simple fix, but today's presentation and demo is really about showing you how to do this from an end-to-end experience. So what I want to do is show you how you can upload this into the Stripe dashboard. Let's open up a new terminal. Make sure you bump the version. So I'm already done that, and you can do that in the Stripe app JSON file. And I'm going to run Stripe apps upload. Great, let's take a look. Awesome. You can see here, this is the super to-do app that we just built. It has version 7. And now let's install this directly into our merchant account for anybody on our own team to use. Let's install the app. Great, that's done. As you can see here on the right, this app is still in preview mode. Let's go look at the app that we just installed by turning off app preview. Great. Now this is our super to-do app that we just built and added in the toggle to-dos and is available for anybody on our own merchant account to use. You can also distribute this app publicly to be available in the marketplace. But to do that, you're going to have to submit this app for review, and then after it's been approved, you can publish this publicly. That's all. Back to you, Paul.
Thanks, Corey. Next, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Orlando, who is an open source consultant and has been working on Stripe apps ever since our private beta. Hey, Orlando,
Paul.
man.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Would you be so kind as to show us the app that you built?
Yeah. Hello, world. And yeah, I'm going to talk to you about my app. So first of all, I was invited by the Stripe team a couple of months ago to be part of the beta here, the Stripe Apps beta. And you know, as put my entrepreneur hat on, and I'm like, okay, what is Stripe Apps? How can I use it? What can I build? And the first thing you do, you know, is like you find a problem, right? Like you try to figure out. So I reached out to a couple of people in the Austin tech scene. I'm from Austin, Texas, and I realized that a lot of people that use Stripe in Austin specifically, they do a lot of like sales, customer support, ops, and all that kind of stuff. And they usually like use a CRM, and also they use a Stripe dashboard, and they do a lot of like alt-tabbing between the CRM. They move onto the Stripe dashboard, they look up things, and then they go back, and that adds a lot of like work, and sometimes you do a lot of like mistakes because you copy-paste from one to the other tab. So anyway, that gave me an idea, and I was like, so what can I do? So I'm gonna make a Stripe app that allows people to like get data from their CRM directly into the Stripe dashboard. And the way I did the Stripe app, specifically, it's for Salesforce, because I think Salesforce is a great CRM, and a lot of people use that, especially the people I talk to in Austin. So let me show you a little bit of how I created this project. So the first thing I did is I obviously have here 2 folders. I have my backend, and then I have my front end. The backend is basically like just a Docker Compose file that spins up a SQL database, and I also have like an Express API that basically spins up. And then in the front end, I have a lot of like different views, and each of these views gets shown as on the sidebar on the Stripe dashboard. So the backend specifically has been built with like open source libraries such as Enforce, which is the Salesforce Node.js library, and it's open source, so you can go ahead and check that out. And then all I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna show you like this is now live on my computer, like this app, like the code is here. If I do Stripe apps start, now the thing here says you can now preview Salesforce integration in your Stripe account. So all I got to do is go back to this view, and as you can see, this is my Stripe app live on the dashboard. So this is the actual live dashboard on production, right? With obviously it's my test data account, but the actual app is coming from my computer, right? So now, as you can see from the view here, it's telling you, hey, for this app to work, you have to go to the customer. So I click here and navigate to customers, and then it takes me here, and you can see, I have some customers here. Obviously, I have a dummy account here, John Doe, and then the Stripe app is telling me, select a customer in your customers list. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And now as you can see, what my app does, it connects to the Salesforce instance. So it's my personal Salesforce instance, and it pulls data. So I can see that John Doe works at acme.com. He's based in New York. He's director of engineering. And then the cool thing is I have all of this like information, like the activity that has been like exchanged between people that work solely on like Salesforce. And I can basically click on one of these buttons, and what it's going to do is it's going to take me to my Salesforce instance precisely on that object. So I do that, and let me show you how that works. So I click view, and it takes me here. So there was a task here, and it's obviously it's dummy data, but here's the task that I added. Similarly, I can also look at cases. So cases in Salesforce specifically, it's like open tickets. Some incident happened, people open a case. No more alt-tabbing, copy-pasting emails and names. You can just click here, tap, and it would open directly on that open case or closed case, depending on the status. But the thing that I'm most excited about is the ability to use notes. So notes in Salesforce is the ability to like leave a note, like the name mentions, to maybe someone else that's on your Salesforce instance, maybe another team member. So here you can see that I added a dummy note, but what do you think, Paul? Do you think we should let's add a note. What do you think I should write here?
Yeah, let's add I love Stripe apps.
All right, I love Stripe apps, exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark.
Yeah, because,
Emphasis.
Emphasis. So let's add and send this. So I'm going to click this button, and as you can see in my Stripe app, it says the note has been sent. So now the magic happens in this note, right? You can see it. It appears here in the sidebar in my app, but I can also click on it, and it's going to take me to that note. So without ever leaving the sidebar, without ever leaving the Stripe dashboard, rather, I can basically collaborate with people on Salesforce. And I think that's super cool. So I spent a lot of effort working on this. I did a lot of user research. I used the Figma prototyping files that were shared by the Stripe team. Those were amazing, by the way. And I built this. And the good news is I work in a lot of open source projects, and I'm going to open source this project so that other people like yourselves in the audience might be able to go and fork the code, do some changes, provide some feedback, and maybe you want to add another CRM and just want to change the backend to maybe work with another CRM. You can do that. So stay tuned. A couple of days, it's going to be out there. I'm going to tweet. I'm sure I'm going to get a retweet, right?
Yeah, don't worry.
You guys got me?
Gotcha.
All right, perfect. What do you think about it?
I think it's wonderful. I love what you've built. I think it looks great, and I especially love the fact that you're going to be open sourcing this.
Yeah, for sure.
So, thank you very much. Shall we go and meet the rest of the panel?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Excited.
All right, so you might notice some new faces here. TJ, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. I'm TJ Fontaine. I'm a software engineering manager and tech lead for Stripe Apps.
And another new face here is Kat. Kat, tell us about yourself.
Hey, I'm Kat Babula, and I'm a product designer for Stripe Apps.
Right, so I want to start us off by asking you, TJ, can you tell us a little bit more about the platform that Stripe built?
Absolutely. So Stripe today has a very flexible and powerful Stripe API that everyone's using, and we wanted to take that power and make it easier for people to plug into and share functionality and solve problems. So we took that notion and built an application model around that. So as Corey was mentioning, your Stripe app JSON file is something that you describe declaratively what capabilities from the platform you're going to use and what functionality you're going to provide back to the rest of Stripe. And then you can check that file directly into your source code so you can keep track of it as you iterate on your application. So from there, we built a local developer experience. So around the Stripe CLI, you can quickly create an app, get started in the live dashboard, as Orlando was mentioning, right away, right from your laptop. And that CLI is able to help you build your back end and your front end in one place. So let's talk a little bit more about that front end. That front end, that UI customization that you can build right into the Stripe dashboard is built around React and TypeScript. So if you're used to building front end apps, you can quickly get started with this, and it's the same. And that back end functionality, you can listen to all of the Stripe events and have access to all the Stripe API that you can then interact and solve these workflows, move money, create customers, synchronize your catalogs among all of your other properties. And then once you've built your app and you're ready to use it for your own account or for others, use the CLI to bundle it all up, and you can plug that into your CI/CD system so that it's all automated, and then you come to the Stripe dashboard and manage publishing your application.
That's awesome, thank you. So you mentioned custom UIs. Kat, can you tell us a bit more about how we're empowering designers and developers to design and build Stripe apps?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked this because Stripe users, they expect high quality experiences within the Stripe dashboard. And so what we've done is we provided a handful of resources and tools to empower you to do just that. But before I dig into those resources and tools, I really want to highlight what Orlando did, which is he identified a actual pain point that users were having and built an app to solve for that. That is fundamental to building a high quality app. So once you identify what that opportunity is, whether that's through talking to existing users or you have a backlog of requests that overlap with Stripe use cases, and you maybe want to test it like Orlando did. So once you have that, dig into Stripe docs where we have docs on how to design and build your app. And in there you'll find guidance on how to use our components, and then components, and then a Figma toolkit, which you can access and see a bunch of Stripe app examples so that you can be inspired by that. Components and patterns on how to best put together and use those components. And you can leverage that Figma to put together a prototype, to work with your developer, but also to test it with end users. And that will help you with the end-to-end, designing the end-to-end experience. And then the other resource that I really want to highlight is the app review requirements. So if you're looking to build an app and publish it for any Stripe merchant to discover, install, and use, definitely check out the Stripe app review requirements. They essentially ensure that you design and build an app that meets the quality bar for Stripe. So that's where you'll see a bunch of trust, reliability, security, and user experience requirements that you have to hit in order to be published. And one tip is to use that as a checklist all throughout designing and building your app and right before you submit it. So those are my big tips on how to build a high quality app.
Yeah, I used the mock-up tool that you basically had on Figma, the Figma toolkit. I was extremely I was so happy to use it because I don't have to code and I can see think about, okay, what is this view gonna look like? I just drag and drop some components and I rearrange them. It's kind of like playing with a little bit like puzzles and stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for working on that.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Next, I want to ask Corey, can you tell us a bit more about our developer story with Stripe Apps?
Yeah, great question, Paul. So this is the first time we've extended the Stripe dashboard, which is really exciting, and we're expanding on how you can customize Stripe as a platform. So when we launched Stripe Apps, we wanted to work closely with our builders and our users. So we held a private beta and worked closely with partners to build apps that you can see in our marketplace today. And as we go forward into the public beta, we like to offer a great developer experience as well to you all. So how can you engage with us? Well, we have our forums such as Discord, where we'll have a channel available for you to chat with other folks in the community, but also with Stripe employees directly for cross design and engineering to answer questions to make sure you feel like you have what you need to move in the right direction and get your app built. In addition to that, we have our GitHub repo with samples, as I mentioned earlier, like super to do, and many other examples to work through things like authentication, UI component flows, things of that nature. And last but not least, we also have our GitHub discussions as well, where we're going to be pushing out new developer content and informing you of updates when we release them. And with that in mind, we also want to add in our public roadmap there going forward to provide you an insight into what's coming next.
I found that the Discord was extremely helpful as someone who's built like an app during like the beta period. Like the Stripe engineers were always there, always able to help, answer questions like 9 to 5. It was great. So thanks for setting that up.
You're actually talking to most of us most of the time,
Yeah,
which is
it is,
good.
yeah.
Great. So we're going to move to Q&A in just a minute, but I want to nip something in the bud because I know people are going to ask about this. TJ, can you please tell us more about the product roadmap?
I'll do my best. We have a grand ambition for what we want to do with Stripe Apps. But as was mentioned, it's a public beta. We've taken this as far as we can before getting more feedback from the rest of our customers. So we really want to know, where do you want Stripe Apps to go? What problems are you trying to solve, and how can we enable that? That's what we want to be able to enable, to have out there and get that feedback from. As Corey mentioned, the developer product roadmap will be public for everyone to understand what we're planning to do. Tactically, very quickly, we're going to be adding the data store API. Now, as soon as you start building your app, you realize that there's more information that you want to store with Stripe about this. You might be able to accommodate that in your own backend or with your partners' APIs, but more often than not, the right place to store that is next to the Stripe object that it's referencing. So we're going to give you that data store API with clear namespace and authorization strategies for who can access it, who can change it. And then we're also going to be doing a bunch of deeper integration into the Stripe dashboard. More pages that you can interact with, more workflows that you can solve for, interacting with lists and other kinds of common workflow steps that you would take in the Stripe dashboard. But probably the biggest question that a lot of developers have is, how can I build a business by building a Stripe app? We want to know what you want from that. Like, what is it that you would want from the marketplace to be able to enable you to build a business around that? Today, though, when you're publishing an app to the marketplace, you can already tell us what your pricing model is and manage your pricing in whatever functionality is the best for you. Or if you're moving money within the Stripe system, you can leverage the application fee to be able to participate in that funds flow.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Right. We are going to move on to our live Q&A now. Just as a quick reminder, if you're on YouTube or if you're on Twitch, drop those questions directly into the chat. We'll pick them up. And if you're on Twitter, just use the Stripe Apps hashtag. So let's go to the first question. So LouvApp Startup asks, can you develop a Stripe app using a multi-platform framework like Flutter.dev? TJ, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So for right now, we're largely focusing on a React front end. That being said, we know that there's a lot of parts of this ecosystem that everybody wants to address. So we've built ourselves under the hood as much as possible generically. So as we get more feedback of what kinds of front end ecosystems that we need to enable, we're going to go out and reach out there. So if you have desires for Flutter and all kinds of other pieces of like how you want to build a cross-platform app, let us know, and we want to figure out what we can do and add to the platform to enable that functionality.
That's right. If this is something that you really want, please be sure to create an issue on our GitHub page, and we will look into it.
Shout out to the Flutter community out there.
That's right. All right, let's go to our next question. I didn't find patterns/components for table paging and file upload that would be described in docs. Did I miss that, or is it something I need to build using small building blocks? Let's see, Corey, something that you want to touch on?
Yeah. Hopefully you're able to find what you need in our docs, specifically for file upload and tables. If those components aren't readily available for you, you would have to look into utilizing some of the existing components to be able to achieve that functionality. Ultimately, the set of components that we provided is our first step in providing you the principles for you to build your Stripe app that have been styled and giving you the functionality to build what you need. But we're always looking for more specific components to add into our library. And as Kaz mentioned, in terms of providing the Figma toolkit, we'll get them in there as best as we can.
Yeah, and I really want to add on to that and say that we think of the resources and the Figma toolkit as like an evergreen resource. So we'll continually update and add as we hear requests and themes of that. So
that was a big part of actually the private beta, and as we move into the public beta as well, where we were launching and rolling out different components, and as our users and developers would engage with us, we got a lot of feedback on what would help them in terms of the way that you should actually build your UI and which components were really, really important. So that's a valuable feedback for us, and please share that with us.
Yeah, more specifically, file it as a GitHub issue. If you find missing components or missing patterns and you wish the platform or the toolkit had a solution for you, please go ahead and file that as a GitHub issue, and we'll track it and we'll make sure that we get it on the roadmap.
Right. Okay, let's go to our next question. Joff Tiquez asks, how is Stripe Apps different from browser extensions? Does it run on a separate execution context? Good question. TJ, you want to handle this one?
Absolutely. So I think the most important thing is we wanted to leverage the capabilities that your browser can actually do today. So yes, there is a separate context where your third-party code is executing to keep everybody safe and secure. But we leverage some technology under the hood called Remote UI to help it feel like it's a native part of the Stripe dashboard. So your code, your React tree is interacting in your sandbox and is being reflected directly back into the dashboard. How is it different than a browser extension? I mean, the primary difference here is about how integrated you can be into the rest of the platform. So it's right there, natively a part of the Stripe dashboard and part of the rest of the ecosystem. So we're able to provide you other lift and other functionality in there. So like this page, you're on this object ID. We can give you helpers to interact with more of the Stripe dashboard along that way. So it's an official API platform for you to interact from the front end.
It's much deeper, right? It's a better way to build things.
I appreciate you giving us that compliment. Yeah, it's certainly how we thought it would be the fastest way to get you in there.
That's right.
It's not that you can't leverage all the functionality of a browser extension to customize your experience across many other pages or other sites, but for Stripe, the best thing we could do is make the platform itself extensible.
Yep.
Correct. Hope that answers your question, Geoff. Let's go to our next question. All right, Swix asks, how does the app review process work when it comes to the user experience of my app? Kat, I feel like you are uniquely qualified to answer this.
Yeah, sure. So if you're looking to publish your app to the marketplace, you submit it for app review. You submit your version as well as an app listing. And we have an app review team that actually installs it on the Stripe dashboard and tested out the end-to-end flow, looks for the core paths as well as like any edge cases, and tested against that. And if you look into the app review requirements, you can see what exactly we'll be checking for. So making sure you're thinking of edge cases, you're thinking of the core end-to-end experience, the navigation, the information architecture.
One thing I'd like to add to that, having worked with a number of partners now, getting into the publish date and app review is really ensure you have a really good test plan. So as a part of submitting your app, there's going to be a section for you to give us the information we need to know how to test your app, both from a fresh account or an account that you may provide to us to then walk through the different states of your app. That's going to be really important as we go through it to ensure that we've checked everything and make sure it meets the bar and also has a great user experience for our users.
Yeah, as Cap mentioned, please do check out those app review guidelines on the Stripe docs. They're very comprehensive. It's written in a very understandable way, and that should be all you need to make sure that your app passes app review. All right, let's go to our next question. So Ricardo Sanchez asks, will I be able to build an app for other services like the customer portal or checkout? That is a really good question. Corey, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. I'm curious on what we'd like to share here. So if anybody else has an opinion, feel free to let me know. But
let me try this.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
We know that Stripe Dashboard is where we're starting. We know that there are a lot of gaps that we can to enable solving workflows for people who are using Stripe today. That's where we started from. It's a straightforward understanding how to put that together. But that's not the only part of your business that you care about. Obviously, you care about things about the customer portal and checkout. I think these are all really interesting opportunities. So if you see things that you want to build an app for and you want to and you really want to go after that, let us know, and we want to make sure we can enable that. Today, with the Stripe API, you can already orchestrate a lot of that experience. So your backend can listen to Stripe events, can react and use the Stripe API. So there might actually be the solution to solve what you're trying to orchestrate for checkout or customer portal already there. For customizing UI, I'm excited to hear what you want to do. So please let us know and provide that feedback.
Let me guess, is it open a GitHub issue?
It is open a GitHub issue.
Okay, cool.
Or talk to us on Discord, whichever.
So that's a great question, and we've had thoughts on that already. I think that's fair enough to say for the direct question.
Yeah, we'd love to know like your business case and what you would like to build if those services were to open up. So let's go to another question. All right, Crystal Ghana asks, how did interacting with these new Stripe tools influence the creation and our workflow of Orlando's new app?
Okay, that's a very good question that I can take. So when I was part of the beta at the very start, I was really intrigued about this whole like Stripe apps. Like, what can I build? What am I actually going to build? Like, how am I going to find an idea? Because like, as you open the documentation, I mean, documents are incredible. And there's a lot of like code in there, but you need an idea. You need to start with something. So I basically did what I think most of entrepreneurs do, or like people want to start a side business or start creating an app for a marketplace. And I went to the users that use both Stripe and maybe something else. And I thought, okay, so what are the problems that y'all are facing? And I was lucky enough to like meet a couple of like people in Austin who are Stripe users, and I just chatted with them for a while, having a coffee and talk about how they use the Stripe dashboard, knowing that I was going to build a Stripe app. Obviously, I couldn't tell them because of NDAs and all that. And then I just got a bunch of notes. I put everything together, and I was like, yep, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then of course, I created a hello world like everybody. 10 minutes in, I was right there with my demo app, and then I just like started thinking about, okay, which CRMs am I going to support? And obviously I went with I used to work on Salesforce CRMs before, so I was familiar with kind of the API and how those things work, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore I just went ahead and I started prototyping using the toolkit and kind of give it like almost like a skeleton of what my app would look like. And then from there I started coding it, and then I started like iterating on it, adding more and more views, more functionalities. And although like I said, it's mostly like a read and write app for now, but I'm working, I want to open source it and pretty much just like have people in the community contribute to it, but also like being able to like understand, what do you think I should add? Should I add more views, be able to do more actions within the Stripe app? Who knows? So once the project is open source and live on GitHub, go ahead and let me know. That would be.
So I guess what you're trying to say there is that don't underestimate the importance of user research. Like, make sure you find that use case that people really want to have solved before you jump into building your app.
That's right. So
right?
Research, iterate. Iterate.
And then iterate, yes.
Iterate.
Good advice. All right, let's go to another question. As Stripe apps are replacing Stripe extensions, what's the transition going to look like, especially in terms of the authentication, which seems to be flipped, and webhook delivery? TJ or Corey, anyone of you guys want to tackle this one?
I'm happy to do so.
Go for it.
That's a really good question, and the narrative of extensions and Stripe apps is a really important question. And for the folks who are already having an extension, and just as a primer for anybody else in the audience, extensions is a product we have that allow you to pull Stripe data into your respective platform. And Stripe apps is the future and vision here, where we're going to be able to power the same experience to be able to enable you to pull Stripe data externally to your external platform, but also within your Stripe app directly. So directly answering your question related to authentication, a user has a couple different ways in which they can authenticate and be able to provide this third-party platform access to your Stripe merchant data. One is the extension OAuth method that you're referring to, and then the next way, which we are promoting and going forward to use as the future, is to just install a Stripe app. So there's no longer a need to OAuth back into Stripe to authorize the user. If you just install your Stripe app, now this merchant has granted you, as a third party, access to your Stripe information. The permissions are listed as they install the Stripe app to be able to pull that into your Stripe app or from the back end into an external service. Hopefully that clarifies, and feel free to ask any follow-up questions.
Yeah, let me add.
And feel free to contextualize.
Yeah. So I think absolutely there is a change to the authentication flow. First and foremost, if you have a Connect extension, nothing will be disrupted today for you. So you will continue to be able to onboard users through the OAuth model, as Corey was mentioning, and then you can start your migration to become a Stripe app if you want to. The authentication is different for how this works, and you do receive a webhook in that model. But what you get from the platform is the ability to say, post-install, what kind of action do I want to take? And for instance, put in a URL that says, redirect them back to a platform, to my partner site, to be able to finish configuration on that side of the things, which is usually what a partner would have been doing in the OAuth flow from their side. So we want to make sure that we have enough of the hooks in place for you to keep that working. If there are gaps, if there are things that you want to do or things that you would like to see and make a streamlined experience for you for how to engage with that authentication and authorization, you've heard it before, file a GitHub issue and we'll make sure that we're able to address that as part of the platform.
The joys of public beta.
This is the start. It's the start, and we're super excited. These are exactly the kinds of use cases we want to build and solve the problems that people are experiencing.
The one thing I'll add on there is, as TJ mentioned, extensions aren't going away for already built extensions, and the functionality will continue to exist for the foreseeable future as people migrate to building a Stripe app to work out this authorization workflow. But as of today, new extensions will not be allowed, and that you will need to build a Stripe app to power a similar experience that you may have achieved with an extension.
Cool. Yep, absolutely right. All right, hope that answers your question. Let's go to another one. All right, Love Help Startup, asks another question. How does Stripe apps help with the automation? Looks manually on every customer. Why? Does Stripe make the invoice automated?
Yeah, I think what we're getting to is there's two sides to a Stripe app. There's a front end and there's a back end. The front end is very reactive, driven through a user navigating through the dashboard, and so there's a lot of you're taking an action in the front end that results in some kind of activity. That may solve a lot of workflows. Orlando's is a really good example of I'm a customer service representative in the Stripe dashboard. I'm taking an action and I need to see contextual data. But that may not be enough for your Stripe app, and that's where the rest of the Stripe API comes into play. So if you want to automate experiences, like when a new invoice gets created, or you want something on your partner site happens and you want to create an invoice in reaction to that, you can use the back end for that functionality. So you have the entire flexibility of the Stripe API to be able to operate on behalf of the accounts that have installed your application.
And what's interesting to note as well is that you can actually access the Stripe API using Stripe Node from the front end, which is not something we allowed you to do before this. So using essentially the dashboard key, you can query the Stripe API from your front end so you don't necessarily need a back end.
Cool. That's correct. You can work in both models.
Correct. All right, should we find another question, please? Okay, Notorious B1G asks, hi team. When will we be able to create pricing/plans pages without coding using Stripe interface?
Oh.
Kat, is this something that you can handle?
I think TJ is
TJ can handle
best
this?
There's a
positioned for
beta,
that
right?
one.
It's an open beta about that.
Is there open beta about this?
There is an open issue for that. Is that what you're referring
It's
to?
like a beta, perhaps?
So right now, today, as we were mentioning, you can leverage however you want to build pricing and manage that for your application today. If you want to use Stripe for that, you can feel free to do so, or if you're an existing SaaS solution, you can leverage that. For now, we want to hear from you. What would you want? What kinds of functionality? What does it mean for you to have that kind of seamless platform experience? Bring that feedback to us, and we'll make sure we get that in the roadmap.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
All right, next question. Matteo asks, can I charge money for my app? What's the pricing model / rev share? So TJ, you did touch upon this a little bit earlier. Do you want to expand a bit more on what this is going to look like?
That's a great question, by the way.
I think it's a great question as well. And I think the best thing that we can do here is ask for people, like, what do you want that model to be? Like, what is it that you would like to experience for building your business with a Stripe app? And we're excited to provide that functionality to you, and that's what we want to hear from you.
I think it's safe to say that you will be able to charge for an app in the future. We are now just figuring out what that's going to look like, and that's why we want to hear from you about what you want that to look like.
And the distinction is you can do this already if your app requires the user to sign into your respective platform, but to do it natively is what's coming, is what both TJ and Paul are kind of adhering to, linking to. Yeah.
Correct. All right, let's go to another question. Griffin Kelly asks, can you publish your app only for your Connect users and not fully public? Ooh.
Today you cannot, but we're really interested in hearing what your use case is for that and how you'd want to use that and what constraints you want to impose there and how you picture that looking.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful use case that we really want to be able to figure out how to enable. So today you have build an app and publish it for all of your users in the Stripe dashboard and all interactions for the Stripe API, and then in the marketplace for everyone who installs from that. There's a spectrum of distribution in between there, and we want to hear what your use cases are of I want to be able to distribute this to these account holders. Connect is a really great example of that.
Do we maybe want to explain a little bit about how Stripe apps and Connect how they differ? Is that helpful maybe for some of the viewers?
Sure. Okay, so from an API perspective, when you're building a backend for a Stripe app or you're building a Connect platform, the semantics and interface is exactly the same, but the use cases for a Stripe app versus a Connect platform are different. A platform is much more geared toward you're able to bring customers to your vertical and solve a solution that's for that particular use case, whereas a Stripe app is really about addressing the businesses who are already using Stripe today.
That's very simply put. Thank you, TJ.
Awesome.
All right, let's go to another question.
Do we have another question?
Do we have any more questions? Joff Tiquez asks, before I sleep, is there a limit on how far we can customize the visual design of the components? Does this have an impact to the approval of the app? Now, Kat, this sounds like a question for you.
Yeah, so if you take a look at the toolkit that we provide, as well as all the components and the patterns, there are constraints. We don't want you to customize it too much. We want it to feel like the Stripe dashboard, like the experience within Stripe. So if you customize it too much, you will not pass app review. And why we do this is because we want our Stripe users to have a consistent experience within the Stripe dashboard. You can one metaphor that comes to mind for me is, for example, driving down a road in a town. You're going to be driving on the right-hand side in America. You're going to see the signs in miles per hour. And imagine if you were to customize your road in your town to then all of a sudden switch to driving on the left-hand side or showing in kilometers per hour. That would be very disorienting to a user. So that is why we want to ensure that there's a consistent experience within the Stripe dashboard.
And to add on to that, from a developer's perspective, you do have some controls, as Kat mentioned. We add constraints, but we do allow you to have some flexibility within that. So if you look at the individual component, all the props that are listed will give you the idea and clarification if you're able to add in certain props that will change the specific way that the component will look, feel, and potentially operate. Specifically, there's also a banner that lives across the top of your Stripe app that you can actually change the background color and add in an icon to make sure that your app is clear to the user that it's your app, but the rest of the application still looks and feels like the rest of the Stripe dashboard.
Yeah, look and feel is super important, right? And remember MySpace? You could customize it, but yeah, that's a different story.
You don't want the flashing backgrounds everywhere?
I do not want the scrolling
Explosion
text.
GIFs everywhere. Yeah.
But I think, like, as someone who's seen like Stripe apps evolve, like the components library is only getting better and more. Like, there's more elements out there that you can use. So, it's all in progress, right? It's a living. What do you call it? Evergreen?
Yeah,
I love that.
Evolving, yeah.
Yeah, and again, if you feel like you're bumping up against the edges of the system, good news, it's a public beta, and we want to be able to address those appropriately. So if you find that you're constrained in ways that aren't allowing you to solve the user experience and solve for the workflow you're working on, let us know, and we want to be able to address that.
Absolutely right.
Awesome.
All right, let's go to another question. Okay, Ollie asks, how does Stripe protect secrets in the secret store? So everyone knows the secret store is basically a way for you to store your secrets, specifically on the Stripe app side on the front end. TJ, you want to go into some more technical details about this?
I'd love to. How does Stripe protect it? Very well, thank you. So you're already using Stripe to store a lot of sensitive information, and so we have a bar for ourselves of how we manage that material. And from a platform perspective, we leverage that functionality. And I think it's important to know, we built this, as you were mentioning, to solve particular kinds of scenarios. When you're building a Stripe app with UI customization in the dashboard, you often need to be able to authenticate a user in the Stripe dashboard to a partner site or a third-party site. Where does that token material live? You could store it in the back end of your own piece, or since you have to do it, since it's a common flow all the time, the platform can hoist that information for you so that pattern's easier for you to implement. And so that's why we built the secret store. So from a platform primitive perspective, we enforce that only those secrets are able to be retrieved by the application that set them and for the user that material is for.
Yeah, what I really like about this is that it opens up the possibility of not having a backend, right? So you can, if you're just interfacing with your own API, a third party somewhere, you can store your API key in the secret store, and it means you don't need a backend at all because you don't need to have that authentication step.
Refactoring time for me then.
Exactly. All right, let's have another question, please. Is it okay to integrate a third-party login form in my Stripe app? I noticed that I shouldn't provide a prompt for per-user authentication from the app drawer. What is the recommended way to do it? Corey, I feel like you are uniquely skilled to ask this.
So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking, can I have a login to be able to go into a third-party platform? I think that's what it's asking. And if that's the case, then yes, you definitely should, if you require a user to be logged into your platform to pull in respective data and get those credentials to make API requests that are authenticated to your respective platform, then you should have a login button. As well, you can have a sign up button. So commonly in some of the apps that we've worked with and built and seen or have had partners build, they have a sign up and login button on their initial page. And then after a user has authenticated, those credentials are stored secretly and safely such that the next time the user comes back, they're already logged in and then they can go straight into the app experience. So I think that's most of the question. If there was a little bit left, maybe I
think there's two kinds of authentication. So when you install your app, you're authorizing the application publisher to have access to your Stripe account. Then there's, from my Stripe account, I want to make sure I'm connected back to that partner site. That might be on a per account basis or it might be on a per user basis. On the per account basis, we have this functionality called settings view, which allows you to define custom UI to capture what kind of configuration you need to be able to do. So if you're trying to authenticate an account to a Stripe account to your partner account, then the right place to do that is in the settings view. If you need to do per user information, then the right place to do that is in the drawer.
In the actual app itself.
In the actual app.
That's exactly what I did with integrating with Salesforce. It's per user, and therefore I let people log in, and then it redirects me back. So
that's right. And when leveraging, as Corey was mentioning, the secret store, you immediately can transition from browser to browser and have your session be active, and you don't have to log in to every browser again.
And the admin page, sorry, the settings page is accessible only by admins. So in the case of setting up an account login for another, for the third-party platform, your admin in your Stripe account can do that, so that not everybody can go in and potentially, sign in and sign out on behalf of your account.
All right, let's keep those questions coming. Remember to drop more questions in the chat or use the Twitter hashtag #StripeApps. Let's go to the next question. Ricardo asks, something like custom fields would be awesome. Custom fields, who wants to take this one?
I agree, custom fields would be awesome. So today in the Stripe API, you have the metadata functionality. So on every Stripe API object, you can set effectively free-form tags. But this is exactly what the data store API is meant to solve. So this is bringing out that functionality into a cleaner abstraction for an application. So you can have data that's associated just for this application. And the future is bright. So depending on what you mean for custom fields, we'd love to hear what your use cases are. I have grand ambitions here of what I'd like to be able to do, but I think being able to say what kinds of fields you would expect to have on an object, I think is pretty reasonable. The kinds of types and the valid ranges seem like a really good use case for that mechanism. So I'm excited. Let us know what you're looking for, but stay tuned.
Yeah, tell us exactly what you mean by custom fields, and we will absolutely look at it. All right, let's go to our next question. Tilak Alcohol asks, to publish a Stripe app in the marketplace, do we still have to become a verified Stripe partner? Like, how is it for extensions? Kat, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so verified Stripe partner was something that we did with extensions, which Stripe apps is different from that, or it's soon going to replace extensions, and you don't have to become a verified Stripe partner. We do still have a partner program where you can enroll in that and become a verified partner. I think the nomenclature there is a little different, but those are two separate programs.
I mean, you can say that by passing app review, you become verified in that respect.
Yes, but we don't call it verified.
We don't call it verified, yes.
You are published.
You are published,
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. All right, let's go to another question. Wojciech I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this. Wojciech Pazula asks, can I somehow create a link to my Stripe app and embed it in my platform to let users know they can use it? Who would like to take this one?
Go ahead. Yeah.
My recommendation or one of my suggestions is to, if you do publish your app and you have, so if you publish your app in the app marketplace, you will have an app listing page. And that app listing page, you can link it out on Twitter, on your, on whatever website you want to, so that way users know it exists and can be directed to install it. Anything you want to add there?
I do want exactly that. So you can obviously link directly to your listing in the marketplace. And then on top of that, if a user has already installed the application and you want to deep link into a particular part of the dashboard page to show that functionality, and that you can also deep link into that page and open the drawer with your app activated as well. And all of that is described in the documentation.
That answers your question. Let's go to another one. Ricardo asks, how come I can't access the window object or other native browser primitives? Very, very good question. Either Corey or TJ, you guys want to tackle this?
Feel free to take this.
Sure. So why can't you, at the end of the day, we want to be able to provide a lot of functionality and a lot of flexibility for you to provide your own third-party code to be able to do anything. So that means you get to use a Stripe Node SDK, you get to use your partner SDK, and bundle it in a way that you're delivering a normal React app, up until the point where it comes time for the platform to run that code. Then we need to be able to put you in an appropriate sandbox. Now, to get that really tight integration with the platform, we want that UI to look and feel as native as possible. That means we need a special bridge between the sandbox and the Stripe dashboard, and that's how we use remote UI. That functionality means that the window that you're running in is not actually the window that the Stripe dashboard is in. So there are some complexities to do that. But my main question back to you, developer, who wants to use the window object, what functionality are you missing, and how can we add that to the platform to make sure that we're doing that? Now, at the same time, we don't want it to feel like a dramatic experience. So over time, if there are constraints to that, and you'd like effectively a polyfill that meets your needs, we can explore that as well. But really, we want to understand your use cases for those properties.
It specifically it uses web workers in the background, right?
It uses an iframe. Neither here nor there. It's a specific sandbox for how to do that. But if you look at your DOM, you'll see that there's an iframe for the active application.
Yeah, that's a good question. Keep them coming. Let's go to the next one. Jonathan Yarbor asks, are there any toolkits to build these types of apps on edge platforms like Vercel or Cloudflare? Interesting.
Okay. Excellent. Great question. The work early on that we did to enable the Stripe Node SDK to work in the Stripe dashboard is the same kind of work that was necessary to make the Stripe Node SDK work for Cloudflare workers or similar platforms. So how can I run the Stripe Node SDK as if it were in a browser context? So that enables that functionality. For now, we are focused on the platform tooling to enable your front end here, and then you can run your back end anywhere you want. So if you want to leverage that and you want to do that, you can feel free to use the Stripe Node SDK in those platforms. But if there are other gaps that you want there, like running the custom UI or running a custom backend on those platforms, let us know what those use cases are, and we can see how we can enable that.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question. Let's see. Okay, as a new developer on the Stripe platform, how hard is it to get into developing a new Stripe app from scratch using their official documentation and resources, Discord, WebDoc, and so on? Orlando, I feel like you did exactly this. How was it for you?
So I wouldn't say I'm a new developer on the Stripe platform, but I was definitely a new developer to the Stripe apps. So I think the bar to get started is very low. As you know, Stripe has some of the best documentation out there. You probably have seen them. So I went through obviously the Hello World kind of project, and after that, I just read more documentation. Then I joined also. I was actually invited to the Discord channel where we could talk about Stripe apps. And there's a community of engineers from Stripe, designers, project product managers, also other users that are also in the Stripe apps kind of ecosystem. And there you basically ask questions, and sometimes it's a Stripe engineer that answers. Some other time it's another user who probably had the same issue as you or similar question maybe a week before. So you can just simply go there and communicate just like you would do in any other open source community kind of deal. And from there, basically you just iterate. Sorry. I'm learning.
I understand what you mean.
Thank you. No, yeah, as an Italian. No. Anyways, iterate and ask more questions. And then if you actually learn something, my personal perspective is try to give back. Try and stay in the community. See what other questions come in. If you can answer, and you think you have the good answer, maybe you don't have the good answer, but you have a path to a good answer. Go there and share and be helpful. Because otherwise, we need to help each other, really.
Yeah, big plug for our Discord there, where you can chat with other developers building Stripe apps. You can swap ideas. You can help each other out. Sign up. It's good, fun.
And I guess now there's also a hashtag Stripe apps that we can use.
Hashtag Stripe apps you can use as well on Twitter, exactly. So I've been told we actually have time for a few more questions, so let's go to another one. Dan the Dev asks, how often do you expect to roll out updates like new components? Really, really good question. TJ or Kat, who wants to take this one?
As fast as we can make them for you. I think from a strategy perspective, the goal is to find the right balance of what are the needs, what are the right building blocks as we build these platform primitives out and understand and get them in the right order. So along the way, you'll ask us for some feature or some component. We will build that into like, okay, that's actually these other subcomponents, and we'll probably roll those out faster before we get to the kind of Uber component around that piece. So our goal is to actually have a really consistent drumbeat around rolling out these pieces. Stay tuned for the developer roadmap that you can be able to watch and understand, hey, this is when we expect the next toolkit, minor toolkit version or major toolkit version, or the introduction of new features in the CLI.
Awesome.
We don't have like like release every 2 weeks or anything like that. It's just we release whenever it's ready, right?
I mean, yes.
It's ready when it's ready.
Exactly. When we feel comfortable to share it with people.
That we want you to have a great experience. It's a public beta, but at the end of the day, your first experience with this platform really matters to us. And so being able to have consistent and quality components that actually solve the problems that you want, that's the bar that we're aiming for. And so that's what we want to be able to make sure that when we give you that first initial implementation of that, it's actually going to solve the problem that you want. And so that takes some time and some exploration on how we're going to build that appropriately for the platform.
Yeah, and what you'll see is not only new components in the next couple of weeks and months, and however,
we're not
forever.
stopping. We will never stop.
You will not
Never
only new
finished.
components, but you'll see existing components and patterns being refined and documentation around them just growing to be more helpful.
One thing I think that may be interesting for the viewers at hand, just peeling a little bit back of the curtain, is that the GitHub issues that you file, we've been plugging them a lot. They actually really do get listened to. Obviously we're gonna be saying that we're listening, but we are. We have triaged those issues on a daily basis, in fact, and that motion really isn't looking to go away, and we're listening, and we want to make sure to have a good approach with respect to if it's a bug, and bugs will be there, but if it's also a larger Uber component that TJ mentioned that we would want to plan towards. And I think all of that hopefully means that we can get back to you and fix things and also iterate on things faster.
Right, I think we have time for a couple more questions, so let's go to the next one. Patrick asks, what are some recommendations on building a high-quality, useful app? What are some examples of strong, high-quality apps in the marketplace? Let's start with just the first part, which is the recommendations of building a high-quality, useful app.
Yeah, let's go back to like my opening spiel about making sure you're building an app that actually solves a real pain point. We're now extending the dashboard to include an app, so there's opportunity to improve user workflows, to add contextual data alongside detail views or objects. So really leveraging that to ensure that it's useful, and then leveraging the resources that we have to ensure it's a consistent experience that's high quality for our end users, and referring to those app review requirements to make sure you're going to hit that high quality bar.
And any favorites anyone want to shout out?
Yeah, I'll shout out some. We love all of our apps, and we mean that earnestly. But some of the apps that I think really shine in the marketplace is one, the Intercom app from a support perspective. Allowing admins and operations users and also founders who are managing their Stripe dashboard directly to be able to streamline that workflow and be able to directly talk to their end customers, message them, do a refund or things of that nature. I think ultimately is getting back to the user and making sure that they have the best experience when transacting with your respective business. Otherwise, I also really like the Founder Path app. I think they have a great onboarding experience. It doesn't even require a login, so each time somebody may install the app, it actually just natively will pull in data to actually provide that experience. You can go check it out more. So those are some of the ones that I thought were pretty interesting, but I think all of them have great use cases. I'm really proud of the people who have built them.
I mean, obviously Orlando's app is one of
And
my
Orlando's
favorites.
app.
Absolutely.
I also liked Orbit's app, I think.
Yes, I was going to mention Orbit.
Orbit.
Love what they did, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to our next question. Okay, Wojciech asks, why did you decide to go with your own Stripe UI extension SDK testing package instead of using React testing library?
Oh, wow.
Really good question. Very detailed. I like it.
Wonderful.
TJ.
So this kind of goes back to the complications around how we implemented the sandbox and how to do that. there are some particular aspects that are a little bit different from the normal React testing interface. But what I'll say is, we're constantly improving on that, and we're working on that. We want you to use the tools that you're familiar with, right? We want you to come to the platform and be able to leverage that in the way that you were building any other front-end application. So if there are gaps there, we want to make sure we reduce them and make sure whatever tools you're familiar with work in the platform.
It is based on Jest, though, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, so it's something that if you know Jest, if you've done React testing before, you should be very familiar with this. You should be able to pick it up no problem.
Cool.
All right, next question. Mary Codes asks, what technologies were used to build Stripe apps? Good question. We kind of touched upon it earlier that we used React, TypeScript, and Remote UI, which kind of powers the sandbox that we're using to run these Stripe apps. Is there anything that I'm missing in particular that we want to talk about?
Stripe CLI?
Yeah.
Stripe CLI, of course, yes. Thank you. Which, if you're not familiar with it, it's open source. You can find out how we built that as well on GitHub. Anything else we want to talk about?
I mean, I think the UI toolkit is built on our internal design system for how we manage how we build native UI for the dashboard. So I think that's an important technology. I think it's really one of the shining examples of why this is so attractive for people to build on top of. And then the other technology probably is the Stripe API itself, and that's kind of a big foundational element of what made this successful. Which, lucky for me, we were standing on the shoulders of giants, so there was a lot of work that went into making that great API and making it work for what we needed, and so we were able to just kind of build on top of that, build the application model around it, and go from there.
Awesome. Okay, let's see if there's another question. To extend my question on toolkits, we set up an app much like this on Intercom. We spent half of our time building a framework around the tooling required to build for the edge. I'm hoping, I'm hoping for a boilerplate, preset examples.
Yeah, happy to take this one. So that's exciting that you've built apps before or utilized existing tools on other platforms, and if you're looking to build one on Stripe's platform, how could you utilize some of the boilerplate code that we provide or preset samples? I'll plug again our GitHub repo where we have our examples folder. There's about maybe 10 or so examples in there to date, and the Super To Do app is kind of an example that demonstrates some of the common UI patterns that we have, and it leverages components that have already been styled to look nice. The other examples are really, really helpful to giving you not necessarily an end-to-end app, but to demonstrate a specific functionality that you may need to add into your own application. If that's in, how do I add a focus view to my app? And what does that mean to click on a button perhaps, and it brings in a focus view? So if you need help with that, I would go look at the focus view example. If you would like to add in authentication, the things that we've talked about before, there is a OAuth example as well that will show you how to implement our Pixie version of OAuth so that you can add that straight into your application. And there's a list of other ones in there. So we do have some samples to date, but we're really excited to add a lot more to making it, like you said, quicker to develop and having some boilerplate to get you running.
Yeah, absolutely. So Stripe Apps Create will give you a skeleton ecosystem to immediately get started. If you use the CLI and say Stripe Apps add view, when you want to extend another page in the dashboard, you'll get another bit of boilerplate already built out for you to be able to quickly focus in on your business logic. And that's really kind of one of the strategies from the local developer experience here is we really want that streamlined. So if you find gaps in there, let us know. We want to remove as much friction as possible. But you can generally get your initial app up within 60 seconds to get to Stripe Apps Create, Stripe Apps Start, and see it in the production dashboard. And that we really prioritize letting you get to building your business logic and not having to think as much about the framework and setup and boilerplate that you need to do. And that's also one of the benefits of being able to bring your own ecosystem. So if you've already got a wrapper around your partner API or some other construct that you're using, it should be able to, and it works in the front end, it should be able to be easily plug into the ecosystem that the platform that we have today.
I love that it's built on the same psychology or the same pattern as the React Create app, right?
Yeah.
Just like that, and you have everything and you're ready to go.
Within 60 seconds, which is something I think we should try out. It sounds fun.
Put me to the test.
Yes, exactly. All right, I'm told we have time for one last question. Hassan Sani asks, is there any plan to open source like components library for the community to contribute?
Ooh, nice.
That is a good question.
There is no plan for that, but that is a really great idea. We do have the Figma UI toolkit up on Stripe Apps, and Figma has a great library where you can contribute to. So I'm wondering if there's something where community members can have a repo themselves on Figma where they contribute to patterns using our components, and then we can take a look at that and incorporate that into our toolkit.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for open sourcing the tools around the ecosystem. So what makes open sourcing the component toolkit today challenging is our usage of remote UI there. Like, you're not actually going to iterate on the design system in the way that you might expect from a traditional component open sourcing. So that's why it's not currently a plan. When we have a mechanism where we can actually get developers in the ecosystem to engage with us, we definitely want to do that. Probably more tactical and like sooner from an open source perspective of what we'll do is we'll get the CLI plugin for apps out there in open source, so that way you can extend it and customize your workflow. So if you were missing boilerplate functionality or you want to integrate it with other parts of your tool chain, we want you to be able to customize that CLI and solve those problems, right? Like I mentioned, you want to be able to plug the CLI into your CI/CD. There are going to be lots of different places where what that means for your ecosystem. So the CLI and the tools and the other developer tools are very likely to be open sourced over the coming year.
Yeah, what I'd be interested in seeing is not necessarily open sourcing the components, but open sourcing patterns. So how you're putting together the components to put together patterns like onboarding or even like your end-to-end app experience, and making that available as examples to other members in the community.
Yeah, excellent suggestion, fantastic idea. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our hour together. I want to say a huge thank you to my panel members over here. A huge thank you for you watching at home. Remember that there's going to be a link in the chat. Please do click on that so we can send you some fun stuff based on Stripe apps. We cannot wait to see what you're going to build with this. Again, we're so proud of it, and we are excited to see what happens. Check out our Discord. Check out that GitHub repo, as we talked about. And yeah, go forth and build, and thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.